Hello, I would like to introduce you to the new library management team at Complex County Public Library. We are Juan Denzer, Melissa Jousma, Liza Rosenoff, and myself, Kimberly Whittemore. We are pleased to be here today at the Acme County Rotary Club Annual Luncheon to tell you a little about the benefits of using organizational storytelling. Sharing experiences through stories is a truly powerful way to exchange and consolidate knowledge. Today, I will start our program by giving you a brief overview of what organizational storytelling entails. Liza will discuss just why it is important to use organizational storytelling and also tell you about the type of storytelling we are using, along with its advantages and challenges. Juan will share with you one of our favorite stories from Complex County Public Library, and Melissa will describe the library's current and future challenges, along with how you can become engaged in the library's future. One early example of organizational storytelling comes from Xerox in the 1980s. Wanting to boost the productivity of their field service staff, Xerox sent an anthropologist out with the field technicians to observe their work patterns. This anthropologist noticed that they gravitated to each other to swap stories from the field. On coffee breaks or in a parts warehouse, they were able to discuss techniques for repairing equipment. This early example of organizational storytelling led Xerox to organize their workers as a social learning unit instead of as independent workers. Deborah Soule and Daniel Gray Wilson of the Learning Innovations Laboratory at Harvard University tell us research suggests that sharing experiences through narrative builds trust, cultivates norms, transfers tacit knowledge, facilitates unlearning, and generates emotional connections. Revealing personal stories can expose one's own competence and commitment to issues, as well as signal one's trust in and willingness to be vulnerable to others. Stories can be used as a powerful way to convey norms and values across generations within an organization. These norms and values can derive from the organization's past and also can describe its future. Transfer of knowledge can be facilitated through organizational storytelling, as exemplified by the story of the Xerox tech reps. Unlearning can be difficult in an organization as people are typically unaware of their own preconceived notions. Rational arguments are thus insufficient to accomplish change. An emotional or intuitive element is also needed. Stories can be effective in achieving this. Finally, stories can generate an emotional connection when they are about things and situations that catch our attention by being different from what is expected. And now, Liza will discuss the purposes of organizational storytelling, along with a variety of narrative structures which can be used for organizational storytelling.
Hi, I'm Liza Rosenoff. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the purpose of organizational storytelling, the type of story that we've selected for the complex public library system, the various narrative structures that can be used for organizational storytelling, the narrative structure that we've chosen and why, and the attendant advantages and disadvantages of our chosen structure. When I'm done, Juan will present our actual story, and Melissa will discuss the future goals and plans for the library. The first question you're probably asking is, what's the purpose of organizational storytelling? How will it help this library, or any library, achieve its goals? Think back to a story that maybe you learned in childhood, of Paul Revere and his midnight ride, or Rosa Parks and her refusal to give up her seat on a bus, or even a fictional tale from Aesop. Unlike facts or data, stories are illustrative. They help us visualize and make real what would otherwise be a dull assemblage of facts. Narrative itself is a powerful tool. It can motivate people, engage them, and shock them out of complacency. Stories can be a reminder of the importance, the social necessity really, of organizations that serve the common good, like libraries. Without reminders of the services libraries can provide to real people, your neighbors, your friends, your family, your children, people can begin to question what the purpose of the library is. Stories bring them back in and remind them of the central role libraries can serve in their community, as roads to information, social gathering places, or as places for people from other countries to perfect their English. Stories can make the abstract personal by highlighting the effect of an organization like a library on the lives of actual people, actual members of any given community. There are a variety of paths an organizational story can take. We've chosen to go with a real-life story because we think it will be more likely to hit home with our audience. This kind of storytelling follows the see, feel, change model. With the facts we're presenting, the hope is that the audience will see the need for change, feeling the problem in a deep, visceral way, and then, based on those feelings, be prepared to take real action. Real-life stories connect with people on a deeper level than a fairy tale. Consequences resonate and stakes are clear. Fortunately for us, there are myriad stories to choose from, as the library is a popular institution among the public in this part of the woods. The challenge was finding the best real-life story. In order to impose some order on the real-life story, a narrative structure also had to be selected. Stephen Denning, in a Harvard Business Review article called Telling Tales, discusses the variety of narrative structures that can be used when engaging in organizational storytelling. I'm going to discuss a few of the more relevant options for talking about a library. A story that sparks action describes successful change that took place in the past, one that, as he says, enables listeners to visualize the transformation needed in their circumstances and then to act on that realization. Communicating who you are involves a story where you offer a story from your past in order to get your audience to empathize with you, and it ordinarily involves discussing some personal vulnerability or strength. Transmitting stories seek to ingrain values within an organization, and they often take the form of a parable. Leading people into the future prepares others for what lies ahead, though visualizing the future is either a concrete or conceptual vision. We have decided to propose that we use a real-life story that also subtly evokes the future at its conclusion. Ultimately, this will tie into our ultimate goal of motivating people to work with the library as it undergoes any changes and challenges over the next 2 to 3 years. Discussing the current status lets us know what we've already accomplished. It also reminds us of what we could lose and how we can build on our already solid foundation. The story should inspire trust and motivate the audience as the library journeys into the future. There are quite a few advantages to the method of storytelling with a future-oriented message. It uses the current status of the library as an origin point and predicts its future trajectory from there. It implies that 2 futures are possible. One where the library grows and renews itself in the spirit of the story, or one where it loses sight of its mission and deviates. Given that real people are involved in the story, we can envision their success with true delight or their injury with true sorrow. These personal feelings are what motivate the audience into action, in this case, supporting the future growth of the library. Finally, as implied in my earlier statements, the abstract goal, the growth and continuation of the library, is made concrete in the story of the young boy that follows. Despite the strength of this format, there are some disadvantages and some challenges. One obvious one is that we're limited by the facts. We can't create our own story to make a very clear point. There's also the risk of appearing sentimental. If the audience feels like they're being manipulated with a saccharine story, they may reject it. Finally, when using stories in general, there is a basic lack of analytical rigor. The story itself has to be the argument. These issues, though, can be avoided. We can handpick the relevant facts without betraying the truth of the story. We can be honest and clear without falling into sentimentality. And we can let the story speak for itself in a demonstrative way and let the audience see the argument without having to have it spelled out for them.
Now let's consider a story, shall we? It's the story of a grandfather and his grandson who discover and rediscover the library. Meet Jacob. Jacob is a 10-year-old boy who comes from an extended family. His parents, both hard-working professionals, always provide the best for Jacob. Feeling very invested in his future, they go out of their way to expose him to the latest technology and educational tools available to him. Jacob comes from a family that believes education is central to long-term success, with a special focus on math and science. As a result of his parents' encouragement, Jacob spends a lot of time using technology and studying. His parents, both doctors themselves, want to make sure he follows in their footsteps, grows up, and has a professional career as a doctor. Now let's meet Jacob's grandfather, Sal. Since Jacob's parents work a lot, they rely on Jacob's grandfather, Sal, to help raise him. His parents are strict and don't allow Jacob to enjoy much of his childhood. Jacob is a shy, bookish boy who often spends time reading things far above the reading level of an ordinary 10-year-old. Jacob's grandfather, Sal, finds himself at odds with Jacob's parents. Sal believes it is important that Jacob finds himself reading things that are enjoyable. The problem is the family lives in the city, and they are often too busy to allow for Jacob to grow. Jacob is involved in lots of activities that his parents feel will prepare him for a career later in life. This doesn't give him enough time to enjoy things that a 10-year-old should. Sal is often spending his time getting Jacob ready for the next planned event for the day. Recently, Jacob's mother accepted a head position at the complex hospital, and the family decided to move out of the city and into the suburbs. Since their move was to a smaller community, Jacob's schedule became less hectic, and he had more free time on his hands as a result of that. For his parents, however, the move was extremely stressful. They found themselves focused on the move and settling in. With his parents' focus temporarily shifted away from Jacob, Sal suddenly had the opportunity to step in and help Jacob broaden his skills and interests beyond the narrow ones imposed by his parents. So Sal decided to take Jacob to the complex public library and introduce him to a world of books. Unfortunately for Jacob, he had never set foot in a library. He was used to getting all his reading needs from his iPad. He was also not used to interacting with other kids. This is where the complex library and its story room helped Jacob open up to other children, as well as to this new found interest in books, not just text information that you would find in an iPad. As a result, Sal was so impressed with the reading room that he decided to volunteer his time reading to the other children. Then Sal had an idea to approach the local nursing home where assisted living grandparents could come and they could bring their grandchildren to the reading room. And now, with the help of Sal's volunteer work, our reading room has grown to not only serve the children, but it also serves the older community in ways that wasn't done before.
Let's take a look at the library's current and future challenges. While there may be many challenges with consideration to communication, such as greater knowledge and updated knowledge of new communication technologies, wider awareness of what platforms are available for communication and what user groups prefer to use, how to best reach diverse community of patrons with needs that vary across the spectrum of services the library can offer, and how to help communicate those needs to the library. These challenges are not necessarily harder now to figure out, nor will they be more difficult in the future. With changing communication needs also comes changing technologies to meet those needs, and gradually these are implemented out of necessity and out of practicality. These technologies are making communication easier and more convenient. With new forms of data collection, social media, new software platforms, smaller internet devices, and much more, we can now have access to our patrons' opinions, likes and dislikes, comments and suggestions that make implementing and tweaking programs, services, collections, calendar events, and more quicker and more efficient. While looking at new technologies affecting communication, we can also ask ourselves, is there a way to improve, advance, modernize the way we actually communicate and associate with one another and our histories, cultures, and contexts in a very human way? Organizational storytelling is beginning to take our relationships with one another in and out of the work environment to the next level. As we better understand one another as co-workers, as service professionals, and as patrons, we become placed into a better position of understanding and are better able to help, empathize, and keep our daily tasks running smoothly. Right now, because of the many ways we communicate within and without the library, we are able to track staff suggestions, schedule changes, and material availability with ease. We can alter programs and days, times of events, and communicate this to the public instantly. Through utilization of organizational storytelling, we can connect our employees to one another through greater understanding and empathy of backgrounds and cultures, and support a daily understanding of one another's context. Through good communication and data collection, we can also hold ourselves accountable to success. By utilizing communication methods such as surveys, polls, and more, we have the ability and the necessity to gather data, collect information and opinions, assess and weigh it against our expectations and goals, then tweak and fix what needs to change. This is vital, internally and externally. Good communication internally can increase work productivity and the quality of the work environment. Let's take a look at how the community can become engaged in the library's future. In the future, we can utilize more data collection to improve any aspect of our internal and external library environment or processes. With good communication, daily tasks run smooth, and long-range items become properly prepared for. Just as we do in library instruction, we need to utilize formative and summative assessments to ensure our goals and objectives are being met. This and putting an eye towards organizational storytelling, utilizing this new emerging field, are ways of ensuring good communication. We can get the community involved by taking good communication we practice among our staff to the public in different forms. A huge step forward would be to make better use of social media and other new outlets to keep up a strong online presence. To get input from the public to include their stories and their experiences as users, we can engage them by setting up a managed blog site where we can ask direct questions and patrons can post their stories and answers. We can have some of our employees write short one-page snippets about who they are and how they came to be library employees, and display them along the wall near the clerk's counter so patrons can read them while waiting in line. This has an added bonus that it brings the personhood of employees to the patrons, and they create a feeling of empathy, while also distracting if lines are long, which could allow for greater patience of the patron while waiting in line. This is a new field, and while not a lot of studies have looked at the effectiveness of organizational storytelling, we know good communication and understanding one another can be powerful. So while we head toward the future, while we bring our patrons into new and updated collections, and while we modernize with constantly changing technology, we should also utilize new methods of communication that allow us to better understand one another to improve all of our daily lives in and out of the workplace.